Hello, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube, and welcome to another episode of Fanalysis, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. I am Retty4, this is EvanNova95.
I solemnly swear I am up to no good.
And this is Jenserai1.
Hufflepuff mug.
Lead us in with a summation of this chapter, Connor, considering Matt isn't here today.
Alright, today we will be reviewing Chapter 15, The Forbidden Forest, dealing with the immediate consequences of the last chapter, where our heroes are captured and brought forth before McGonagall, and are subsequently sentenced to detention in the Forbidden Forest.
Yeah, captured really is the right word, given the severity of the situation, because she goes ham on these three. Yeah.
It's maybe a little too much, you know? It's pretty severe.
I know that she's kind of worried about the current tensions with the whole Philosopher's Stone being here in the cast at the moment, but 50 points from each of them plus a horrific torture of a detention is a bit much, maybe.
If this is what she does just for being out of bed at night, what does she do with
something serious?
Precisely, when something serious happens. I mean, she just completely crippled her own house chance of winning for the mildest of crimes. But yeah, it's funny as well, given what we know that happens later on in the books, when more major infractions they get for less, really, when you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was a nice little engaging scene to kind of shake them awake. And to be honest, they just, like I said last episode, they deserve this. They left the one tool that would help them in all their endeavors.
Caught, yeah.
Yeah, deservingly caught is the right way to say it. But yeah, this next day as well, the school turns on Harry for the first time. Not the last time, as we know, but the first time.
No, definitely not the last time.
The sad thing is that when the school does end up turning on Harry that harshly later on, the sad thing is that Harry's kind of prepared for it because he's dealt with it before
a number of times. Yeah, when he gets to the more severe cases, and this is the mildest of them, pretty much.
But he gets eased into the school-wide lockout.
Yeah, it's
that's really depressing.
it's Harry Potter. But yeah, Hermione and Neville get the same treatment, of course, but they're not quite as well known, so it's not taken to the same scale. But Harry,
although Neville is emotionally affected by it a lot more.
Oh, of course, yeah, because he's not quite as robust emotionally as the others at this point.
Well, not only that, he's feeling like a sense of betrayal because he doesn't know the picture.
Yeah.
So he takes it particularly hard, which feeds into his actions a bit later on.
Definitely, yeah, for the preceding or succeeding chapter. Mm-hmm. But Harry hangs up their collective detective hats for this. He's like, no, we've done enough. This is we've stepped too far, and it's cost the house Cup, and he's feeling he tries to resign from the Quidditch team as well to Wood's chagrin. It's like, what are you talking about? How are we going to get any points back if we can't win Quidditch? I love how constantly obsessed he is with that as well.
Yeah,
like,
it's not an unreasonable point,
No, it's true. Yeah, it's perfectly fine. It's just funny as well coming from him. You can just imagine the delivery on it. It's like, what are we going to do if we can't win Quidditch? Quidditch is life.
I mean, that's a very team captain thing to say.
For sure.
And of course, and because of that, his response to that, I actually kind of get the impression that during the team practice, he was the one member of the team who wasn't referring to him as the Seeker, because. Well,
even the twins doing that as well. What did you think of that?
Yeah, a little out of character, but it's a minor in the grand scheme of things. It doesn't really come up again in any noticeable, degree.
I'm glad you mentioned it, Connor, because I completely agree about Wood not doing that as well. But the twins were the one that surprised me. I was like, really? I mean, I feel like they probably wouldn't, given how much more familiar they are with him.
Right.
As well as the fact that they're no strangers to rule breaking and points losing themselves.
Yes, yeah.
I kind of get the impression that their approach is more so just that slightly looking at Harry with a pained expression on their face rather than the cold shoulder, because they're like, yeah, buddy, we know exactly what it feels like, but oh my God, you got it so much worse. And it's almost that thing where it's like you're not even, the person's in pain, you don't actually hold it against them, but you don't want to interact with them because just thinking about what they're experiencing just makes you shudder on a very deep level.
Yeah, it's something that would have to be the closest you could really come to, because otherwise it is just very out of character for me. I think it was one of those oversights she didn't really consider when she wrote the line. I mean, it must be just given what we know about the characters.
Yeah, but like I said, it doesn't really come up much more later, so it's not like it's not a glaring thing,
Of course,
that like keeps for the rest of the book.
Definitely not. Just one of those minor lines where I was like, tilted my head a bit.
Yeah.
But we get the first temptation for them putting the hat back on and getting involved
Quirrell,
again, and sticking their nose where it doesn't belong, as they like to put it. With Quirrell's kind of interaction with Snape in the classroom,
quote unquote. It's another one. It's another brilliant example of a scene that completely changes its meaning once you finish the book, and it's revealed that Snape is just a red herring, and that Quirrell is literally being controlled by Voldemort. It's just kind of frightening to think about, because it's like it's already been described earlier in the book that it's like Quirrell was looking thinner and paler, like making it pretty clear that he was having the life drained out of him by Voldemort. And yeah,
it's one of those. It's one of those scenes that I think works well for the kids as well. Like I know we've said before how the red herringness of Snape is directed specifically at the younger children who haven't really engaged with narratives like this before, who don't know it's coming by the very nature of how it's presented. And this is probably one of the better examples of that. It kind of, it's also followed up. It's not something we see happening. It's kind of in retrospect, as Harry had encountered it and then returns to talk about it with the others. It's followed up with a scene that I like because it highlights the issue of why they can't just go to Dumbledore on this. Because I know we like to joke about how that would solve most problems in the series, and it would. But they don't think they can do that here because they're just kids. Why would they believe them? They have no proof. Because Harry doesn't have this rapport with Dumbledore yet. So it makes sense that they don't just go and blow the whistle on him, because they have no, from their perspective, they have no whistle to blow.
Yeah, it would just be their word against Snape's, which wouldn't hold.
We know it wouldn't, because obviously he is innocent.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
So it's funny in that regard as well.
The other thing is that when you actually think about what Quirrell himself is saying in the scene, is no, not again, please. And then sounded as though someone was threatening him. Then all right. Basically, it's Voldemort ordering Quirrell to do what is done in this chapter.
Yes, which isn't very pleasant.
Yeah, it's the fact that even Quirrell is like, dude, what the fuck? No.
Yeah,
it's like
pretty horrific, as we'll get to.
Quirrell, I want you to eat babies.
It would be curious
as being on par with that kind of mentality.
Evil.
Yeah.
It would be interesting if they ever released like a short vignette that like details Quirrell's like inner thoughts, over the course of this book. I'm just saying, it would be interesting. It would be an interesting read.
Oh God, no, please! Various degrees of that going throughout the year. He wakes up in the morning and looks in the mirror and just knows on the back of his head is his worst nightmare. Ugh.
Would be interesting.
But yeah, the tension slip arrives, and we get the kind of game cutting to, or at least half the game, because Ron's out of the picture for this one, heading towards Hagrid's hut with Filch in tow, leading them down to what he hopes is their deaths, apparently, because he's so keen for this to happen.
He even talks about past punishments and how he hopes they'll get reinstated one day, because he's just that nice of a guy.
Yeah, he's a bit weird.
The thing that occurs to me, though, is that he's describing these punishments as if they were still used within his lifetime.
Yeah, which is very strange.
Which, actually, to me, it's another example of just how backward wizard society is. This sort of horrific, vicious corporal punishment that we forced out like a century ago, the wizards only forced it out a few decades ago.
Yeah, and it has to be one of those things where it's always been just kept in his office, kind of like an old museum piece. And he's like, when he got the position, he was like, "Oh yes, one day." I really hope he didn't actively get to do it himself within the century.
Whereas I kind of have the impression that he did get to actively do it, and he really misses being able to do it.
He must be ancient then, because I mean, Dumbledore is not going to be in a school where that's allowed, surely.
Well.
I mean, any of the teachers, really.
Right.
Well, the thing is that you got it. To me, it's another example of just the wizards' different cultural perspective, as well as their differing attitudes towards safety. It's like it's pretty much explicitly stated in other material that wizards are tougher than normal people. So it's like hanging someone from the ceiling by his wrists by chains. To us, it's like horrific, cruel, and unusual punishment that's only done in a medieval dungeon. To them, it's like their equivalent of being spanked.
And mind you, Headmaster Dippet was a little bit more lenient with, employing certain people than Dumbledore.
Oh,
so
sure, but still, that was
yeah.
very strange little part of the book.
And I think the other thing is that I think it might very well have been some. I get, like, thinking back to Wizard Society itself again, yes, I agree. Dumbledore would have pushed that out as soon as he was able. What if he wasn't able to until just a few decades ago and had the lobby for it for years and was resisted by the government?
I don't know. I'm definitely of the mind that it was just something he kept in his office because it was always there. I sincerely doubt that he would use. Let us know in the comments what you think on that one, guys.
I like to go dark.
Moment from the past, or
Yes,
a
you do.
really dark look on the current state of the Wizarding Society in not too past years. So we get to Hagrid's hut. I love the interaction between Hagrid and Filch and Malfoy, respectively, as well. This is like a really engaging part of Hagrid's character, because before now we've seen the kind of jovial, almost to a certain extent bumbling side of his personality. He's always been very nice. Here you see the kind of Hagrid with his business head on, and it's like, yeah, we've got a job to do. We're going to do it. Get over it. It's almost him in kind of parent mode, if you know what I mean. You can definitely see the starting of his potential as a teacher here, which is very apt, considering he's supposed to teach them a lesson in this chapter.
Yeah, I mean, he can have his eye on the ball when he really has to. So yeah,
it's just nice to see that, because this is pretty much the first time you do.
Yeah,
especially following the Norbert chapter, where he is at his most bumbling, pretty much.
Yeah. But when it's the sort of thing where it's like Hagrid is a perfect example of one of those people with that sort of a delusional competence where your ignorance of the task means that you think you're going to be better at it than you actually would be because you don't know what the task actually entails. But then when you actually start studying the task and learn what the demands are, you learn to take it more seriously. It's like Hagrid, to me, seems as a perfect example of one of those people who, when he learns about the task and learns what's entailed, he takes it very, very seriously. But the problem is that every single new task that comes his way, he's just diving in head first with childlike wonderment and enthusiasm until something scary bites his hand. But because he's a half giant, scary things biting his hand isn't that big a deal.
Yeah, it's an interesting way of putting it, because he's definitely someone who does... when he is, like I said, when he's taking some stuff seriously, he gets into that very specific, serious modes. The other example would be the giants in book 5, when he's talking about them and such. But yeah, the rest of the time he does just kind of roll through life, as you can as a half giant.
And it's also a perfect example of just how good it is to have someone like Hagrid in your corner, because sure, he can be bumbling, he can make mistakes, he's not the best guy for keeping secrets, but he's a very, very capable operative.
Yeah, especially when it comes to stuff like the Forbidden Forest and gamekeeping, because, durability, if nothing else. But, so he...
Just don't hire him for stealth.
Yeah, please don't hire him for stealth, even though they kind of do that to an extent with the giants.
Well, the funny thing is, I get the impression
that was more diplomacy.
Yeah, diplomacy for sure, but they had to stealth around for a little bit. But I suppose hiding from giants when you're half giant isn't that big a deal.
Yeah. And the other thing is, I get the impression that Hagrid's one of those people where it's a bit like Victor Crumb walking versus being on his broom. When Hagrid's walking around on a city street, he's bumping into things, knocking crap over, leaving a wake of destruction. Put him in the woods, he's completely silent, and he can just vanish right around that corner without you realizing what the hell just happened.
Yeah, as we said before, he's a true outdoorsman, so yeah. I could definitely see that being the case with him. But yeah, anyway, regardless, they head into the forest, beginning their little mission of finding the unicorn killer. We
do have a bit of a departure from the film in the makeup of the teams at first, which we should probably mention.
They originally paired off into 2 different teams with Neville and Draco, and Hermione and Harry with Hagrid, and obviously the other pair get Fang, who's a ruddy coward, because Malfoy sees his teeth and goes, yeah, he'll be great. Poor choice, Malfoy. But yeah, so they head off in different directions. It's one of those things, again, where you really think about it and you think, yeah, this is really dangerous. Why are you sending Fang, Neville, and Draco off into the forest alone, Hagrid? Because this place has... I mean, again, it's him not understanding the nature of the creatures in here. He's like, oh, it's fine, they won't hurt you. And go visit Aragog, Harry and Ron, it's fine. Take Fang with you, you'll be fine. Just say you're my friend, they won't do anything to harm you. Yeah, it's just one of those again, it's kind of a darker example of the whimsy in the first books, not making much sense with the context of what we know later.
And it's one of those dark examples of whimsy that I like to just follow through to its logical conclusion about all of the unfortunate implications.
All of the students that never made it back from these detentions.
And speaking of unfortunate implications, silver blood everywhere because wounded unicorn. And all I'm thinking is like, Jeebus, like, it just seems to me that based on like what's described here, like assessing it almost like a crime scene. One of the reasons why taking down the unicorn is probably so bloody difficult is because you got to attack it multiple times, because it's like you rush in, score a single hit, and it zips off into the forest. So you got to track it down all over again, rush in, score another hit. And it seems to me that that's the sort of thing that's described here, because it's basically stated blood is everywhere. It's like this unicorn just went left, right, center, everywhere in this area, getting blood on everything. And it's just creepy, because thinking about what must have been occurring for this to happen.
Yeah, well, I mean, Hagrid himself even states that it would be challenging for a werewolf to take one of those things down. So you put that in perspective, and
yeah, not fast enough.
And we know what werewolves can do.
Yeah, it's just about the kind of speed involved, and I like the description of the blood as well. The way it's kind of you imagine it kind of glinting in the moonlight, very ethereal presence, which fits the kind of nature of the creatures. It's one of the more commonly known, well, definitely the more commonly known of the creatures we've seen thus far on the magical spectrum. So it's kind of like Rowling does a good way of kind of bigging it up in our heads, so there's the presence of this within the world.
I personally just have this image of them going through that forest with their lantern just illuminating a little bit of orange globe just in front of them, but everything outside of it is pitch black. But as they're walking along, you actually see the silvery bits of blood on the tree branches and the tree leaves just kind of just coming alive in the lantern, like glinting silver, standing out against the blackness before you even see the tree that they're on. Like the whole idea that everything is given its shape by the blood. Yeah,
I like the way you put that. It's again, not really how it's described in the book, but I can totally see the kind of nature of that. It's kind of invoking the images from the words she gives.
Yeah, and their brief little encounter with the sound of the cloak trailing over dead leaves. And I actually thought that the film did this very well, because they didn't have them reacting super loudly with Hagrid being like, "Get behind that tree!"
That was a bit...
It's like, I loved how the film handled it, because they heard the sound, and if you look into the forest on film, you can just see that little ghost of a man, of a cloaked figure, just flitting between the trees, and you kind of get Hagrid looking over, but with that very wary, "Okay, kids, shut the fuck up.
Yeah,
we don't want to get this thing's attention."
Yeah, I really like the way the entire forest sequence was handled in the film. I know they cut quite a lot, but I think it did the atmosphere a favour with the film adaptation, because in the book you can spend more time on the moments in between, but with the amount of time they had allocated to it film wise, they couldn't introduce every single centaur and every single moment that happens individually throughout it. They had to go with the big beats, so I think they did a good job. But that's a good example of a moment that they actively changed that they didn't have to, that I completely agree with, because Hagrid going, "Get behind that train!" You expect like this immediately cut to a huge action scene, and then it just immediately comes to an end, and it's like, that's
especially
maybe
given
a bit of an overreaction in that moment, Hagrid.
Especially given, what the hell do you think Quirrell/Voldemort, who we know is a cloaked figure, would do if he heard that?
Precisely, yeah.
Like, what the heck? Like, it's
right.
like his. Like, I could just imagine. Like, I don't think he would attack them, but he'd probably rush off in the opposite direction and just be talking to Voldemort. "No, dude, we should abort. We should abort. There are people out here." And Voldemort's like, "No, keep going."
Kill them. No, so I completely buy Hagrid's violent reaction in terms of wanting to protect the kids. It's just the loud screaming and like actively announcing their presence was just an odd thing, with no reaction to it from the cloaked figure as well. I just always read a bit odd from him, even as a kid. But yeah, we get
whereas
various
the
different
movie
encounters.
just had that. The movie had it carried it off better, because
completely agree.
They revealed the existence of the cloaked figure. They made and everyone's very subdued reaction to it made a point about this thing's dangerous, and they know it.
Yeah, it's that shiver up your spine situation, which is captured very well. But we get various other encounters as well, leading off with Ronan, the first of the centaur.
Not the accuser.
No, not the accuser, the centaur, that comes in with a "Mars is bright tonight," and thoroughly irritating Hagrid and his questioning.
I know. For me, it's like I had actually just read a thing talking about astrology and how his statement, "Mars is bright tonight," is basically him saying war is coming because Mars is the Roman god of war, so there you go. And it's just like, for me, it's like reading this whole chapter thinking about astrology and divination is just very, very foreboding there, because it's more foreshadowing to what's coming up. It's like the centaurs are basically saying constantly, war is coming.
Yeah. Could probably stand to be a little more specific, but yeah.
You're not wrong. But yeah, Bane arrives. They have the extended conversation with the centaurs and the scene overall. I used to find this particular kind of exchange very boring as a child. It was the centaurs in general were just like, oh, okay, I'm moving on, reading on. I want to get past this. But obviously growing up later on and even rereading it now, I find them much more engaging for the same reason you just said, Connor. The fact that you can read into each individual line and know that they are actually saying something about what's to come. Not massively overtly. They're not just stating the individual moments of the plot, but you get a sense of foreboding from everything they say, and the way they talk about their philosophy, very briefly, but still interestingly, with the whole "we don't get involved," we foresee, we foretell, but we don't interfere, and the kind of opposing opinions from friends and Bane, and that comes a bit later, I know, but the kind of philosophy they have against each other with that, I find really interesting to read. That she writes that and captures the kind of ethereal nature of their discussion very well.
It's interesting in that she kind of portrays the centaurs as being in the same place as the Ents are in Lord of the Rings, in that what they really, really want to do is just sit this out. They don't want to get involved because it's not in their nature, but circumstances pile up on each other, and
yeah, you gotta do what you gotta do.
I just really like the way it plays out. It's very engaging.
Yep.
But we
my
get the
business lies with Isengard tonight.
with a rock and stone. But yeah, red sparks. Hagrid thunders off. We get the team swapping because Draco's a dick. Harry and Draco team up. Surprisingly little interaction between the two here. You'd expect a bit more, quiet character development, or at least character tensions building up between the two. But Draco basically stays just completely silent the entire time. Until they encounter the next moment.
I think it's another one of those instances, because I remember J.K. Rowling saying in an interview that one of the reasons why Draco was able to learn legilimency and occlumency so well in the later books is because he's a person who's very, very good at compartmentalizing his emotions and feelings. And to me, it feels like this is a situation where Draco knows, okay, my thoughts and feelings don't fucking matter. Be on high alert. Danger, Will Robinson. Danger.
Yeah, for sure.
I got bigger things
somewhere.
I got bigger things to worry about than that Scarface douchebag over there.
Yeah, you're not wrong. But I just even a quiet kind of discussion with them in professional mode or something. I don't know. It seemed like there could have been something here. Just two sentences or so where they interact, and they kind of are just almost ignoring each other completely.
But at the same token, you don't want the scene to drag. You want to get to the main objective.
Then again, obviously Draco's not in total focus mode because he did go and decide to pants Neville.
Yeah, that's the other part.
Still,
yeah, it feels like a missed opportunity. That's all. Not like a major one. It definitely doesn't damage the chapter. I just felt like if this had been later on in the series, we would have had a moment between these two. By how she was writing Draco by that point. But yeah, we get to the actual real plot moment with the unicorn, beautifully described as they come across it. I like how it was so sad, to look at. So he'd never seen something so beautiful and so sad. It's such a simple sentence, but the simplicity lends power to the moment for me, especially considering it's merely followed up with then Voldemort appearing before the creature and just going straight in with the blood sapping.
Yeah, it's kind of freaky the way it's described. Especially when you imagine a kid reading this.
For sure, yeah. It's very well. She rides the balance between horror and just basic tension as well, quite well. And the description isn't, it's not bloody, it's not graphic. It's just the image, the picture is painted in your head by itself almost with the few words that she does use. And yeah, it is pretty unpleasant. Just imagine it just sticking his head straight into the wound, just sucking the blood out from just raw. It's very visceral.
Yep. On the bright side, I can cancel my room service.
Oh god.
It never ends.
It never ends. Also, worth noting, can you imagine the terror that Voldemort must be feeling in this moment? He's like, oh god, the bane of my life just turns up as I'm at my most vulnerable, drinking this blood in the middle of a forest. Obviously, he's not going to be scared of a little kid, but in the physical form. But this is the very person that defeated him all those years ago.
He's probably got a pretty good inkling. I don't want to attack this kid or fight him or anything because I do not want a repeat of what happened last time.
But at the same time,
can you blame him?
Yeah, but at the same time, it's Voldemort. So what does he do immediately? He jumps through and tries to gut him. At least that's what we're described as happening. But Friends interacts and intervenes rather. Friends intervenes, and we get pretty much what happened in the film at this point. The awesome kind of overhead kick that knocks the cloak away. Cloak vanishes into the distance, and Harry kind of reawakens his awareness to very awesome Friends looking at him. And we don't get any Mars is bright tonight from him. He's a much more. It's described as well
very
as being
straightforward.
Young. Yeah, he's young, so you kind of get the idea that he hasn't got those high-minded, stubborn ideals, and
he's a little bit more down to earth. He doesn't have his head in the stars.
Yeah, that's exactly the way you want to put it. He's young, so he's more down to earth. It kind of the perfect description. It's like the down to earth was made for a common sense centaur. I'm glad the way you put it that way. I'm glad that you put it that way.
We also get the explanation for why Voldemort feels the need to drink unicorn blood and the effects of it, which adds to the Philosopher's Stone plot.
Yes, absolutely. He kind of gives Harry a plot dump. So this is what's happening in the school, and this is why the Philosopher's Stone is so vitally important, because the alternatives are this bad, and it's a good way of explaining that there are alternatives to the Philosopher's Stone, but they're not ideal. It's a good way of focusing the importance of that specific artifact in our heads.
Don't do unicorn blood, kids.
Yeah, the whole thing about this is that it also got me thinking about just the nature of vampirism itself, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to sustain your own life by taking the other person's, not the blood as the vehicle of his life, into yourself, taking a piece of him into you. But the problem is that something is always lost in the transfer, and what you're taking into yourself isn't exactly wholesome.
One of my favourite parts of that, with the simple description, was the mention of you will have a half-life, a cursed life. She never really dives in to explain what that is in specific detail, but you don't need to. Just those lines in that simple delivery gives you everything you need to know about how this is not something you want to do. This is like the worst exact way you could live your life. It's horrible, horrific, and evil. It's just a perfect example of that simplicity in this chapter.
You're like a ring wraith, stretched butter spread thin over too much bread.
For sure.
Yeah.
And it's the description of how she describes the unicorn as well. We mentioned how it's very powerfully described all the way through the chapter, be it the initial words from Hagrid, be it the initial impression from Harry looking at it being so beautiful and so sad, but the description of it being so pure and innocent, and the true horror of how you could do this to someone like that. It's something like that. The Friends highlights. I like, again, it's just about the simplicity of how everything's described here. It adds so much more weight to what's being said.
And it's another thing that can also go back to what is constantly said about Voldemort. Voldemort himself is said to be deathly afraid of darkness and death. So what does he do? He cloaks himself in those things as a way of mastering those, apparently mastering them, not really. And it's like, this is a sort of horror that he loves to inflict because, it's kind of the whole self-centered mindset of which would you rather be, the cause of all the world's ills or just another victim? Would you rather be the poor person beholding the sad, tragic, horrifying thing, or the guy doing them?
The whole Tyrion, wear it as armor so it can never hurt you idea, but taken to the evil nth degree. But But yeah, after Friends explains what's going on and highlights the essence of the plot for the readers, they leave the forest, and we get the explanation of what's happened to Harry, as he explains to Ron and Hermione all that has occurred. And I like the way they kind of highlight the fear that they're all feeling to different degrees. Ron with the "stop saying his name," which we kind of understand the fear for a bit more now that we've had an actual encounter with Voldemort supposedly in that moment. And how Harry's kind of being blasé about it. He's still kind of running on adrenaline at this point, and it's a really well done scene. I love the moments when they come back and describe, because obviously there are a number of times when one or more of the trio isn't present for the actual occurrence. I like when they go back and discuss it after the fact in the common room. It's a good narrative vehicle.
And then the chap, after he explains everything, he goes up to his bedroom and he finds the invisibility cloak very neatly folded up under his sheets with a note that says, "Just in case."
It is a nice way to kind of end the chapter with a little ray of hope.
Yep.
And Harry turns the note over, and it's like, "Are you fucking kidding me? This artifact is priceless. Why are you just leaving it on top of an astronomy tower? What if someone else had found it? Are you kidding me?
Sword of the Hollows, for God's sake!
Do you have any idea what this is?" You can just imagine Dumbledore's just face palm thought as he realizes, even if it wasn't a Hallow, even if this was just a really cool invisibility cloak, he just left it up there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Of course, it is pretty clear that it was Dumbledore who gave it back, and it's another one of those things that really kind of changes meaning when we find out about Dumbledore's actions later on. It's another example of him goading and manipulating Harry from afar.
As well as the fact that what the cloak represents for him as a person. With him, it's a case of him receiving a Hallow and giving it up. It's very it kind of evokes the image of his own struggle with power in his past, and how he's like, nope, I wasn't meant to have this. Despite the fact that he's building the Elder Wand at this point, of course, but he doesn't hoard the Hallows the way he would have done in his youth.
Yeah, at this point, it's like even he. When I hear Dumbledore discussing the Elder Wand and his use of it in the later books, it's like the impression I have is that at this point he's actually ashamed that he has it, because as he describes it as the meanest of the Hallows, the least of them, and it was the one suited for him.
It's a bit tragic in that sense, but very powerful for the character. It fits him, it fits his struggle, and it lends so much more impact to what we know about him in the future. But yeah, that's the end of the chapter. Definitely an enjoyable one, dark but enjoyable.
There was a bit of an interesting thing. I was rereading this chapter this evening just before our podcast started, and I was listening to my personal playlist of Battlestar Galactica and Halo music, and just as I read the phrase "just in case," the music crested, and I had the distinct impression, not finished yet, still have work to do.
Couldn't do that when you were 10.
No, you could not. Anyway, that was chapter 15, The Forbidden Forest. Join us next time for chapter 16, Through the Trapdoor. Looking forward to that one. It's going to be definitely one of my favourites from this book, and one of my favourites for a finale in general. But we'll see what our thoughts are then. I'm Moretti 4, and I still don't have an outro.
Evanova 95, Mischief Managed.
Teach us something new.
Oh, you're working it in there. I know what you were saying then. Sneaking that in there, Connor. Goodbye.
Can't escape it.